There are lots of ways that we can really get that sweet treat that we crave, because from the time I was a little kid till now, and probably till my last day, I love desserts and I love finding ways to really satisfy that craving, but in a way that is so kind to our body, to our health, and really helps our body chemistry stay in the most ideal balance that it can be by maintaining our insulin sensitivity. Hi friends, welcome back. Today we are talking about one of my favorite subjects ever, and that is guilt-free desserts. I love making desserts and sweets, and this started from when I was very young, well before I learned anything about sugar or insulin sensitivity or had a care in my head about health or weight loss. And so I've had quite the evolution of, making traditional desserts when I was young, to learning all about nutrition and trying to make things fat-free back in the 90s, to fast forward to having a blog, realhealthyrecipes.com, and 4 published cookbooks. My most recent one, How Not to Get Sick with Dr. Benjamin Bickman, which is all about insulin sensitivity. So what does this mean? This means that we don't want to take in a ton of sugar, because that is going to create insulin resistance in our bodies, and really make us more susceptible to getting all kinds of diseases and weight gain. So we want desserts and we don't want any downside. So what do? We change the recipes that we make so that we can have delicious desserts that still taste really good, really just hit the spot and cure that sweet tooth craving. But we're not taking in a ton of sugar, right? We're not taking in this refined sugar that's going to spike our insulin and, set us up for all of these problems. So there are so many recipes that I have, but these are 5 of my go-to dessert recipes that I enjoy guilt-free, because we're modifying things. So the first really guilt-free sweet treat that we're going to talk about today is dessert bark. So dessert bark essentially is when we melt dark chocolate and we sprinkle in nuts or seeds, or you could do fresh fruit or dried fruit, and then you kind of stick it in the freezer so it gets all hard, and then you break it into these pieces. So the recipe that I have, we can make our own chocolate, which is pretty cool because we can really control how we sweeten the chocolate. Or we can get a chocolate that is already sweetened with stevia. So that chocolate, we can get Lily's chocolate chips. That's a really good brand. That's always an option. It's a little bit more expensive. So I'm going to give you the recipe where you're kind of making your own chocolate. But just know that you can also just melt down Lily's chocolates. Okay, so we're going to take 1 cup of coconut butter, which you can get in a jar from a natural foods grocery store. We're going to mix it. So you're going to melt it down in a skillet. You're going to mix it with 1/2 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. So this is really the base of our chocolate, right? With the coconut butter mixed with this powdered unsweetened cocoa. And then we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract for flavor. And then we have to sweeten it, right? And so I really do like using Swerve, which is a 0 sugar sweetener. And what I like about using Swerve is that it comes in 3 different textures. So it comes in a confectioner's style, which is a powdered sugar. It also comes in a granular, so it looks like just regular, white sugar. And then also in brown Swerve, so it's a brown sugar replacement. So it's incredibly simple to swap out normal sugar, that's this highly refined, gonna really spike your insulin, with this Swerve alternative, which is made with, erythritol and different things that has sweetness, but it doesn't impact your insulin in a negative way. So with this recipe, I used 1/3 a cup of the powdered confectioner's swerve to add that sweetness. You have options though. There's other ways to sweeten this melted chocolate. You could use just liquid stevia. So liquid stevia is such an awesome thing. I always have liquid stevia in my purse, and I like to do the one that's water-based. Because this way you can sweeten your beverages. If you go to a coffee house or something, you never have to put actual sugar in a drink, but you can still have it sweetened with a little squirt of stevia. So that's something that you can add to this melted chocolate mixture, is just a little bit of liquid stevia. There's also, if you want to add a little bit of sugar, but not refined, you can add a tablespoon or so of pure maple syrup. That's an option. Like I said, that will start to impact your insulin because that would be adding some actual grams of sugar. Of course, it would be less refined than, a refined cane sugar. So it's like, a little bit healthier, a little bit better for you, but we're still adding that sugar. You could get like a keto syrup, which is most likely sweetened with like erythritol or stevia, and you could add like a tablespoon of that as the sweetener as well. So that's all melted. We're gonna spread it out over some parchment paper on like a baking sheet. And then this is the fun part. Now we're going to sprinkle it with assorted nuts and seeds, or you can slice up fresh fruit. I love using berries for this, or you can use dried fruit. You can use coconut flakes. So wherever your creativity takes you, you're going to sprinkle this all over the melted chocolate and then just stick it in the refrigerator or the freezer until it hardens up. And then you're going to break it up into pieces, store it in a Ziploc bag, and then keep it in the freezer. So this is one of those kind of like, when your sweet tooth acts up, if you have some of this in the freezer and you can just reach in and take a piece of it out, and it's not full of refined sugar, it still tastes sweet. It still gives you that like flavor of chocolate and the flavor of the nuts and the fruit or whatever you've like added to it. So it's really satisfying. But then we also have like really like usable nutrition, right? I mean, like the coconut butter has this like really usable healthy fat in there to like satisfy us. And if we've used nuts and seeds and fruit, there's vitamins and minerals. And so it's actual healthy, good food for us. But then it's also really curing that little sweet tooth craving. Okay, the second guilt-free sweet treat that is one of my go-tos is to make a whipped cream and serve it over berries. Now, traditionally, whipped cream is sweetened with a powdered sugar, right? Like just regular powdered sugar. So what I found is that if we swap out powdered sugar for the powdered swerve and add just a little bit of vanilla extract and salt, we can whip up cream that tastes just like whipped cream, but we aren't adding any actual grams of sugar. Serve that with some fresh berries. And this to me is like the perfect dessert. This is my go-to. If we ever have people over, we love to make like a steak dinner for people. And this is my go-to dessert. And what I love about it is you can make it ahead of time. And so to make this, we're going to get an electric mixer with the whisk attachment. We're going to use 1 pint of heavy whipping cream, and this needs to be really chilled, so it's like very cold. And then I use 6 tablespoons of the confectioner swerve, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then just a nice pinch of sea salt, which I feel like adds a lot. And then you just whip it up until it is like a really creamy, great consistency. And then if I'm planning to serve this later for dessert, I'll create little individual cups or bowls of fresh fruit, and I'll put the whipped cream on it and just cover them and stick them in the fridge. And so they'll last, 6 hours or so. pull them out after dinner. It's beautiful. You can put a little like piece of like fresh mint on there. It's so satisfying. But again, we're not taking in refined sugar. So we're getting all the satisfaction of like a sweet whipped cream with these fresh berries, but we're not spiking our insulin like we would with regular whipped cream. And that whipped cream you can use with any other type of dessert. It is really versatile. Okay, the third guilt-free sweet treat that is one of my go-tos is chocolate chip cookies. So really, all we have to do to make chocolate chip cookies that are really low in sugar and guilt-free is to swap out some ingredients. Okay, so here is my go-to chocolate chip cookie recipe. We have 1 stick of butter, or you could also do a cup of coconut oil if you prefer. I prefer butter. 2/3 a cup of the brown sugar swerve. So it's like this brown sugar replacement. 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. 1 egg. 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. 2 cups of almond flour. And this is the replacement for regular flour. 1 cup of the Lily's chocolate chips. And Lily's chocolate chips are sweetened with stevia, so they're not full of sugar. And then 1/2 cup of chopped pecans. So this is a very simple chocolate chip cookie dough recipe. And really, we've swapped out the regular sugar for swerve, and then we've swapped out the regular white bleached flour for almond flour, which almond flour is, I mean, it's a whole food. It has healthy fats. It has great fiber, much lower in carbs than, bleached white flour. And so really the nutrition of these little cookies, and then we used the stevia sweetened chocolate chips. So we have those little dots of chocolate without, having it have this refined sugar in it. We were able to really modify how this cookie is going to impact our blood sugar, and really just our body in general, because we've added that really good fat, we've added the fiber, we've really reduced carbs, we've reduced sugar, and the flavor is delicious. And that's the thing that is so fun when people try something like this for the first time. Their reaction and how surprised they are that like, whoa, what do you mean there's no sugar in this? Like, this tastes so good. So this is really my go-to here. Now, if you're not a fan of almond flour, another thing that we could do is you could use oat flour. And so you can make oat flour yourself if you have a food processor, and just take like old-fashioned oats and pulse them. And when I do it this way, I don't like to ground them down like till it's really powdery. I like to leave it like almost a little bit thicker pieces, because really what we're doing is we're just increasing the fiber of the cookie. We're making it so the carbs are breaking down slower in our body, and really just making it a little bit healthier. So that's another option that you have. And with the chocolate chip cookies, again, I highly recommend making a bunch of them. Keeping the extras in the freezer, because they will last a long time. And this way you have this like low sugar option for dessert whenever the craving strikes you. Because let's be honest, when we're like, oh my gosh, I need something sweet, you're probably not going to take the time to make a whole recipe, right? But if you know your freezer has a bag of dessert bark and you have a bag of some of these chocolate chip cookies, then you have an option that's on hand that's going to satisfy your sweet tooth craving without getting you off track with your diet. So with the cookie dough, we're going to have the oven at 350 degrees. And I love to use parchment paper on the cookie sheets, just it makes it really easy. And we're going to do the dough in just 1 tablespoon at a time. So there's small little cookies. We'll space them apart like 2 inches. And then we're going to bake it for 8 to 10 minutes. And I always err on the side of making it a little less baked than overbaked. So you just want the bottom of the cookie to be a little bit golden, and you want the top to look a little bit like still gooey. And that is like the perfection. And you pull it out of the oven and let it kind of cool off for a little bit before taking it off the pan. Okay, the fourth guilt-free sweet treat that we have today is a no-bake fudge cookie. So these are awesome, and you can make them shaped like cookies, or you can just make them like little balls, almost like little energy balls. But really, the flavor comes from the main ingredient, which is 2 cups of pecans. So I will take 2 cups of pecans and put it just in a dry skillet over about medium heat. And I will just kind of mix it and stir it until they get really golden. And you start to really smell them as they're toasting. And there's something about toasting pecans that brings out this incredible flavor. So once you have 2 cups of pecans nice and toasted, you're going to throw it into a food processor. And you're going to add 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder. We're going to use a 1/4 cup of the confectioner swerve, 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt, a 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil, and then 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now, you also have the option here to add in some chocolate protein powder if you want. If you want to add a little bit more protein and have these be more like energy balls or like protein balls, this is where you can add like a scoop of chocolate protein powder. You're going to pulse it up in the food processor. And since we added that 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil, it acts as a binder. So it's going to all be kind of like sticky at this point. And so you're going to take it out. You're going to shape it however you want it. Whether sometimes I'll take like a tablespoon and then I'll sort of flatten it so it looks like a little cookie. Or you can just leave it like a little ball, like an energy ball. And then you're going to chill it. So you can stick them in the freezer. You can stick them in the fridge until they're chilled. And so coconut oil, when it's heated up, it melts. And then when it gets cold, it gets hardened, right? And so that's how we can use it as a binder. We don't need to, add eggs or bake anything because this coconut oil will hold it all together. So these ones, it sounds like such a simple recipe because it is. But there's something about the really like rich flavor of roasted pecans combined with this chocolate, with the cocoa powder it's like addicting. It is so good. And so that is, if you are just a fan of chocolate, this is a really good one to try. And then again, keep the extras in the freezer. This is another thing where you're like, hey, you could grab one of these little, no-bake fudge balls and have that for dessert. Okay, the 5th guilt-free sweet treat is all about caramel. So I learned this technique. Actually, I kind of came up with using coconut sugar to make caramel, like a caramel sauce, like 10 years ago. And so this recipe does have some grams of sugar from the coconut sugar. So coconut sugar is unrefined. It still has the vitamins and minerals in there. It still has fiber in it. And so it's not going to impact your insulin the way that a refined sugar would, but it is still going to impact it more than, say, like a swerve, right? And so this one, I still love making this recipe, but it is one of those ones where you do have to notice, like, hey, I am taking in some, healthier sugar, but there's still some grams of sugar here. So, we use moderation. So, and it feels a little bit like a magic trick because we're taking these ingredients and we're turning it into this like amazing caramel sauce. And it's very simple, like doesn't take that long. So we just have a skillet. We're going to add 1 cup of coconut sugar. And I will do a little disclaimer here, because you could use 1 cup of the brown sugar swerve, which would really reduce the amount of sugar in the actual caramel. However, I will say the end product is not going to be quite as delicious as using the coconut sugar. So if it's your first time, I would recommend trying it with the coconut sugar. Okay, so we have our skillet, just like a medium-sized skillet, 1 cup of coconut sugar. Then we're going to add a 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon of a full-fat coconut milk. So this is really important, that this emphasis on the full fat. And so it can't just be like a very liquidy coconut milk that you would keep in the refrigerator. It needs to be like from a can where there's like, it's creamy, right? Another option is just using like heavy cream is another option. And so 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon of either creamy coconut milk or just coconut cream or like a heavy whipping cream, 4 tablespoons of coconut oil, and then 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. So we have these ingredients in the skillet and we're just mixing them together, incorporating them, and we're going to wait until it starts to simmer. And it's going to be just like a dark, kind of runny liquid at this point. Once it starts to simmer, we're going to sprinkle we're going to take it off the heat, away from the heat, and you're going to get a whisk. And you're going to sprinkle, this is the magic part, this is the fun part. You're going to sprinkle 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda over the caramel liquid, and you're going to whisk it in with the whisk. And what you're going to see, like instantly, is it's going to go from like this dark liquid to almost like this light brown, fluffy caramel mixture. So the baking soda is really going to change the color and the consistency, and all of a sudden you're going to have some caramel, which is pretty cool. So from here, I would maybe just do a little pinch of salt, mix it up, and boom, you have this much healthier caramel sauce. And there's a lot that you can do. So basically any recipe that calls for like a melted down caramel, you can use it. But then what I like to do, just take an apple, slice it up, and have a little container of this caramel sauce, and you can just dip your apple in the caramel sauce. That is a really delicious way to enjoy this healthier treat. So I hope you've enjoyed these 5 guilt-free sweet treat recipes, and just some takeaways for you. Because if you like to experiment like I do and make, delicious desserts, but make them a little healthier, right? Make them so that they're going to be kinder and gentler to our body chemistry and to not spike our insulin. Then there's a few things that you've probably noticed throughout these recipes. The first one is replacing the sugar. So really, there's no reason for us to even keep refined sugar in our homes. There are so many lower sugar alternatives that we can use in our baking and in our cooking to where we don't need that refined sugar. So really familiarizing yourself with some sugar alternatives so that when it comes to making a dessert, you can have the confidence of, oh, I can swap out, this refined granulated sugar for this swerve or whatever it is that you decide to swap it out for. And these days you walk down the baking aisle at any grocery store and there are so many options for lower sugar sweeteners. I mean, you can go wild with trying all the different ones. Seeing, they all have a little bit of a different taste. So seeing what you like, what your palate agrees with, and experimenting with them. And really maybe giving yourself the challenge of like, hey, I'm not going to use, refined sugar in my home anymore because I don't need to, right? There's all these ways to do it healthier. Replacing the flour. So we talked about using almond flour. We talked about swapping out oat flour. Now, for me, almond flour and oat flour are really simple because you can swap it out for the exact amount of the regular flour that the recipe calls for, and that's why they're really nice. Coconut flour is another great alternative, but coconut flour is not a 1-to-1 ratio. You cannot replace 1 cup of regular flour with 1 cup of coconut flour. That would be a disaster because coconut flour absorbs so much more liquid. So you would be left with, like, if it was cookies, your cookies would be like little bricks, right? And so that's where if you're going to start using something like coconut flour, maybe looking up specific recipes. If you go to realhealthyrecipes.com, my recipe website, there's a whole bunch of different baking recipes that utilize some coconut flour. But yeah, finding a way to replace just the regular white bleached flour with something that's a little bit healthier, has some fat, has some healthy fiber in it, but can still give you an end product that feels like, more of a traditional baked good. Replacing the chocolate. So, very much like, how I won't keep refined sugar in my pantry, I also won't keep regular chocolate chips because the Lily's chocolate chips, which are sweetened with stevia, taste just as good, if not better. And it comes in milk chocolate, semi-sweet chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate, all of the options that you could possibly desire. And they do cost a little bit more than chocolate chips that are sweetened with refined sugar. But this is one of the things where like we pay now or we pay later, right? When it hits our bloodstream and, sends our insulin skyrocketing. So this is another one of those little things that, you can really start to make all of your recipes healthier by swapping some of these things out. And just the final idea and the final thought with making your desserts healthier is adding in protein. So we know that protein and fat need to be the macronutrients that we take in the most of. And so a really great way to increase your daily protein is by adding protein into dessert recipes. Just a very simple one that just came to mind is, taking plain Greek yogurt, preferably not non-fat, so like maybe a 2% or a 5%, and mixing it with 1 scoop of protein powder, maybe adding some fresh fruit on that. And, that pretty much turns into a pudding. But when you look at the nutrients of that, the Greek yogurt has healthy fat. The Greek yogurt has healthy protein. You just added a scoop of protein, which should be at least 20 grams of protein, which also should have some sweetness to it without sugar, because it should be sweetened with stevia or monk fruit. And then we're adding in fresh fruit or a sprinkle of nuts or seeds. So there are lots of ways that we can really get that sweet treat that we crave, because from the time I was a little kid till now, and probably till my last day, I love desserts and I love finding ways to really satisfy that craving, but in a way that is so kind to our body, to our health, and really helps our body chemistry stay in the most ideal balance that it can be by really maintaining our insulin sensitivity. So I hope this has been fun and that you have some ideas to go make some of these delicious recipes, fill your freezer, and then when you have a craving, eat one of these healthy things. And I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and I will be back next week with another message.